Watchers in the Fourth Dimension.
Strange lights in the sky never bode well for the future.
Yes, they've just killed an old friend. This, my dear doctor, is our insurance.
Hello and welcome back to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. I'm Anthony.
I'm Diana.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Riley. And kill them, Scythe Man, and you die as well.
This episode, we're heading to the 17th century where a tangle with some alien fugitives happens to trigger a pretty famous historical event. That's right, it's the Visitation. But before we get into that, Diana's going to take a quick look at the mail, or it might not be that quick. But anyway, over to you, Diana.
Thanks. So this week we're looking at the mail from Castrovalva. Y'all had a lot of thoughts, so please bear with me. This is going to be maybe a little longer, and some things might have been cut because y'all all wrote novels. So thank you for your library of thoughts, and here are some of them. So David Patty said, really enjoyable podcast on Castrovalva. Listening to you talk about it cemented something for me about Bidmead. He had absolutely no idea how to structure a story. True. Something in the discussion made clear to me is that Castrovalva's got the same structure as Legopolis, which is a real problem. Both of them bury what could be fantastic concepts behind stories that just don't work. Loved the podcast, made the mistake of listening to it in the car, which I've done before. And when you lot started discussing the Master's sex dungeon, I had to slow down. I was laughing so much. So, story's a bit meh, but the crake was mighty. 5, no, Gallifrey can't be your safe words out of 10.
Nice. Maybe we should put a warning. Anthony, should we do like a disclaimer? Do not listen while driving.
It's probably a good idea, but, you know, I'm going to let people find that out on their own time.
Do not operate heavy machinery.
Or do. We are not responsible for your safety.
R.L. Gray said, I've always loved this one, largely because I'm with Bidmead and being eternally fascinated by the TARDIS as a concept and an environment. I love the essentially magical moments of the TARDIS giving the Doctor's outfit and then delivering him in a wheelchair. By the way, if the writer is okay with sharing it, I would love to read the whole email about Legopolis. Sounds like a really interesting analysis, which I low-key agree with. Now, Nathan Laws said, listening to this one, I'm kind of surprised that Bidmead gets the flack he does from the Watchers. I've always liked his scientific mysticism approach to things. I have to say that I agree with Riley and Peter Davidson on Tegan. Davidson liked Janet Fielding, but he's been quoted as saying that he thinks that a companion should like traveling with the Doctor. It's understandable in Legopolis, but after a while it just grates. Nyssa, on the other hand, is wonderful. 10 out of 10, no notes. I'll be interested to see what you guys think of a very retro story next time. David Gorton, okay. That's probably the best description I can give for it. There is some good stuff in here. The whole recursive occlusion situation is quite interesting, but it does seem to be a 2-part story that needlessly dragged into 4. So a reasonable debut for Peter Davidson, but could have been much better. Giving this 6 incorrectly located ambulances out of 10. Our friend Alan Seiler says, finally, I've been impatiently waiting for you to get to Davidson for the longest time because this is my era. But my gosh, these first 2 episodes are boring. I will which I can hear in his voice.
Absolutely.
I will expand on one of Riley's comments about Tegan and Nyssa. One is all emotion, the other reason. One is headstrong, the other logical. They temper each other. Their bond is evident on screen, and Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton are still best friends to this day, which I love. Yeah, cute. Bill Stevens sent a lovely YouTube video of Tegan and Nyssa with the Laverne and Shirley theme, which I loved. I loved and appreciated it. It was darling. And the comments featured differing opinions on the quality of the Laverne and Shirley show, which I also loved and appreciated. Mark Dunstan says, Tom Baker would be a hard act to follow, but Davidson fills them well. Apart from Tegan and Nyssa carrying a box for 20 minutes. Not a bad story. 8 out of 10, 0 rooms. Dan Boris says, I like this episode. As someone said about Legopolis, it doesn't always make sense, but it's a fun watch. I do agree that it would have been better if Castrovalva had been introduced earlier in the story. Listening to your recap, I just came up with a new piece of headcanon for this episode. The Master says that Adric's mathematics are powering the Castrovalva illusion. I like to think that Adric intentionally made all of the books look old as a subtle way of tipping off the Doctor that the Master might not notice. I give this 7.5 hats worn by the same person out of 10.
Adric is not that smart.
No, let Adric have it.
We're not going to go out of our way to give him credit for anything.
He's suffering so bad right now.
Wow, we are split down the middle because I'm with Diana on this one. Let
Yay.
Adric have this one.
Just give him something. It's just headcanon, and it doesn't bother you. Kieran James Evans says, so it looks like I'm more on board with Bidmead as a writer. In fact, I maintain that it would have been better if he had stayed on as script editor this season and someone like Chris Boucher, and someone like Chris Boucher, free after the end of Blake 7, took over season 20, rather than who we actually end up with. But I suppose that is in light of future knowledge. Castrovalva has lots of ideas, but does feel like two different stories combined. Anthony is right to point out the film sequences. Season 19 is the only season for which all film sequences survive or are available to use, either as the edited transmission print or the A/B camera negatives. Preceding and subsequent seasons are rather hit and miss. Anyway, this one gets 7 out of 10 sentient illusions.
I love how much knowledge some of our listeners have. That's amazing to be able to recall that. And incidentally, the location shots from the Visitation on the Blu-ray look phenomenal.
Yeah, I think they're all smarter than me. It's fine.
There's more special interests, I think.
Just re-emphasizing the Socratic, I know nothing. It's fine. Now, Nicholas Rutherford comments, did you jettison the comments, Ari, Keeper of Traken, to give yourselves extra thrust for this episode? Did we miss the Keeper of Traken comments?
Yes, we did. Maybe we'll do them next time, or maybe not.
Wow.
Sorry, guys.
My bad.
Collective our bads. Ben Flay then comments, back once again with the Renegade Master.
Hey.
Then we jump over to Instagram, where Beto Beatnik says, yes, the dish of the day, Doctor has arrived.
Yeah.
This episode sets the precedence for most of the episodes to follow. Tegan being a whiny mess? Check. Adric being oh my God. I should read these ahead of time. Adric being a twink bottom for the master? Check.
Whoa, here we go.
Amazing.
And poor Nissa, the badass, being sidelined for the obnoxious characters to get the attention? Check. And the master trapping everyone in a super pointless, convoluted plot just to fuck with the doctor's head? Also check. 4 out of 10 Escher paintings. A twink bottom. I mean, he's not wrong. Guy Lambert said, loved this. My childhood doctor begins his journey while Matthew Waterhouse gets horrifically drunk in the location hotel and experiences recursive occlusion in his tiny twink tummy.
Oh my God.
So many twink comments. Good Lord.
Absolutely splendid. 7 chunks of Alzerian boy barf out of 10.
Oh my God.
Gosh.
I love y'all. Austin D. Patterson says, I've been waiting so long to hear what you guys think of Tegan. I love her so much. And I love when underappreciated characters get love. Then we did get a couple of emails. Adam Brown wrote, I've mailed before, so none of that first time stuff. Just wanted to say your output has pleased, occasionally annoyed, but always been welcome. Just saying that you're appreciated, loved, and to keep going. All the best.
Aw, ads, thank you.
Very cute. And then Stacy Custer says, hey, watchers, and this one's a bit of a long one, but I didn't want to cut all of it because she's adorable. I've been listening for a while now, and a few episodes ago, Riley said how much you like new people to write in, so I thought I'd say hi.
Awesome.
Yes, right? Please write in. We love it. I found your podcast maybe 6 months ago. I was on a Doctor Who kick and was looking for somewhere to talk about what I was watching. Half the fun of watching shows is being able to talk about it. The first one I came across was 5 Year Rapid, which focused in on the 3rd Doctor season, which suited me just fine as it's my favorite era. And anytime anyone wants to talk about the Brigadier, I'm in. Same.
I get it.
I quickly binged that podcast and was still hungry for more. Enter The Watchers. You guys have really knocked it out of the park with this podcast. I started listening to your episodes on Pertwee's era, and of course, it's my favorite. But they were so good, even though I disagreed with a number of your comments. Good.
People always do.
And I wanted to listen to more. So I started watching episodes I'd never seen before. I hadn't really watched any of Hartnell or Troughton, so I would know what you were talking about during your discussions. The Romans and the Invasion are now 2 of my favorite serials.
Oh,
yes,
great.
I love it. I don't remember a time I didn't know about Doctor Who, and I have no idea what my first experience with it was, but I do remember that it was a treat to stay up late on a Saturday night to watch it with my mom. When I was a teenager, I had a favorite cartoon. Gargoyles. If you haven't seen it, you need to. Yes.
The theme song is one of the best theme songs ever.
This is a Gargoyles appreciation moment. Absolutely. Such a good show. I could only watch the first 15 minutes of the show before I had to catch the bus to school. So I grabbed a tape one day and started recording the cartoon so I could watch it when I get home. Oh, the 90s. It was one of my mom's Pertwee tapes. She was so mad at me. And I was like, what's the big deal? It's just John Pertwee. I still apologize to her periodically for that statement. You might remember that at the beginning of this stupid long email that I said Pertwee is my fave. Yeah, funny how things change when you watch them at different stages of life. Well, I have lots more to say and lots of opinions. I frequently talk back to you as I'm listening, and I'm always a little sad that I can't actually talk to you. But this is already too long. I do want to say, though, how much fun and laughter you and the pod bring. Thank you so much for undertaking this Herculean effort to plow through Who. I'm along for the ride. Stacy Custer, pronounced like General Custer, but no relation, or custard without the D in pronunciation language. P.S. I want to talk about chairs. Will never not be funny.
Yes.
Wow.
We were just talking about that last weekend, weren't we, Julie?
We were. And it's just always 10 years from now, someone's going to come up to me and say, so what about chairs?
Julie's thing forever.
If there was ever one t-shirt we were going to do, if we ever were going to do one, that would have to be it.
Yep. Yep.
And that, friends, has been the mail.
Thank you, Diana. And as a reminder to our listeners, we really do love getting your feedback, thoughts, comments, and questions. And as you've just heard, we do try and read out as many as possible on the show, some of which in full. So, of course, please do get in touch. As always, you can contact us through Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, or you can email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. Additionally, we would absolutely love it if you subscribe to the podcast, if you're not doing so already, and if you dropped us a review or rating on your podcast platform of choice. Anyway, on to the Visitation, and looking behind the scenes on this one. Like many stories of this time, it has its origins in when Christopher H. Bidmead became script editor for season 18, and he was looking to bring in new writers to the show. One name that was recommended to him was radio playwright Eric Saywood. Although Saywood had no television experience whatsoever, he agreed to develop a proposal for Doctor Who. Around the end of March 1980, he submitted a story idea bearing the intentionally ridiculous title of Invasion of the Plague Men. It was inspired by the work of his former girlfriend, Paula Woolsey, who had been studying the architecture which arose in the wake of the Great Fire of London in September 1666. The fire, which raged for 4 days after starting at a bakery on Pudding Lane, had followed close on the heels of another catastrophe, the 1665 outbreak of bubonic plague. At the time, many believed that the so-called Great Plague had been foreshadowed by a bright comet observed in the skies over London at the end of 1664. Saywood's girlfriend had observed that the black rats which spread the plague-carrying fleas became virtually extinct within months of the Great Fire. Saywood thought that these elements would provide an effective science fiction basis for a story about social conditions in medieval England. He also regarded Invasion of the Plaguemen as a vehicle to resurrect Richard Mace, a character he had created for several radio plays during the mid-70s. Originally an actor and detective living in Victorian London, Mace was now reimagined as a thespian put out of work by the closure of theatres following the outbreak of plague. Unfortunately, J&T didn't love the idea of Invasion of the Plaguemen. He felt that the narrative was too similar to the Talons of Weng Chiang, and he also believed that the inclusion of Richard Mace verged on the kinds of whimsy that he desperately wanted to stamp out in Doctor Who. As a result, no progress was made on Saywood's proposal for several months, by which time Bidmead had turned his attention to season 19. By then, it was agreed that Invasion of the Plaguemen had enough potential to warrant giving Saywood the opportunity to further develop his ideas. In mid-September 1980, he was commissioned to provide a detailed storyline with the title amended to The Plague Rats. Several changes had to be made to his original vision for the serial. It was now known that Tom Baker would be leaving Doctor Who at the end of season 18. Guys, we're like 4 episodes in and we're still talking about Tom Baker leaving. Good God. So Saywood had to work around the presence of a yet uncast 5th Doctor. Romana and K9 had also been written out of the show, replaced by Adric and Tegan. In addition, JNT was contemplating adding Nyssa to the TARDIS crew as well. And let's not forget that she was originally not meant to stay on after the Keeper of Traken. Saywood was able to make the necessary amendments to his storyline, and in late November 1980, he was commissioned to write the full scripts. The title was amended to the rather less silly The Visitation. and Saywood's aliens, the Pteroleptals, took their name from the phrase territorial reptile. Not a fan of that one. Anyway, one item that Nathan Turner asked Saywood to incorporate into his script was the destruction of the sonic screwdriver.
Yes.
JNT viewed the device, which had featured in Doctor Who since Fury from the Deep in 1968, as an overly convenient plot contrivance, much like K9. He thought that doing away with the sonic screwdriver would challenge Doctor Who's scriptwriters to be more imaginative in devising ways for the Doctor to solve problems, and would also make the Time Lord seem less invulnerable. After he was cast as the new Doctor in late 1980, Peter Davison came to share his producer's opinion, and he felt that it would be more interesting if the Doctor instead carried an assortment of everyday objects in his pockets, which he could use in inventive ways to get out of trouble.
MacGyvering.
Yeah. Meanwhile, JNT was searching for a new script editor to replace Bidmead, who would be finishing his one-year contract at the end of December 1980. Saywood was encouraged to consider applying for the role by Bidmead himself. Saywood, on his side, was interested, but he subsequently learned that the post was being filled by Anthony Root, and in fact it was Root who helped shepherd the Visitation to its finished form. What Saywood didn't know at the time, however, was that Root's appointment was only for 3 months on a trainee basis, after which he would be moving to a similar interim assignment on Juliet Bravo, which was a police procedural drama. While it was expected that Root would then come back to Doctor Who, he recommended that Saywood be given the job for the intervening 3 months, and Saywood accepted the position in March 1981. By the way, Saywood would last 5 years in the position. Root would never return. By the time Saywood joined the production team in mid-April 1981, season 19 was already undergoing a degree of upheaval. The original season opener, Project Zeta Sigma, had been abandoned at a late date, forcing the recording schedule to be rearranged. The Visitation was intended to air midway through season 19, but it was decided that it should be the second story into production after 4 to Doomsday. It would be directed by Peter Moffat, whose last work on the show had been State of Decay a year earlier. Joining Moffat's behind-the-scenes team, we have Rosalind Parker as production manager, and this is the only time that she will fill the role on the show, but she isn't a total newbie. She previously served as an assistant floor manager on Season 5's The Abominable Snowman and The Web of Fear, and on Season 8's The Claws of Axos, so some pretty good stories there. And outside of Doctor Who, she also worked on the one and only Z-Cars, All Creatures Great and Small, because, of course, in this time period of the show, EastEnders, and Blake 7. Another newbie that we have is Ken Starkey as designer, also making his only credited contribution to Doctor Who. However, he had previously been an uncredited design assistant on Season 9's The Curse of Peladon. Outside of Doctor Who, he also worked on the Oneiden line, Softly Softly, Task Force, which of course was one of the many Z-Cars spin-offs, EastEnders, and Ghostwatch. In terms of returning faces, we have the second and final contribution of Odile Dix-Miro as costumer. She had previously worked on Castrovalva, or actually, given the non-linear production order of the season, she will go on to work on Castrovalva. And as composer, we once again have Paddy Kingsland returning to the show for the 6th time. Now, one pretty cool element of the story is that as the main Pteroleptal, Michael Malia wore a costume which incorporated remote-controlled animatronics for the alien's lips and gills. This was the first time such technology had been used in Doctor Who, and it was conceived by visual effects designer Peter Ragg and constructed by Richard Gregory of the freelance firm Imagineering. And although the costume was very expensive, JNT was very eager to combat the perception that Doctor Who monsters often looked like pantomime horses when they spoke. Anyway, the final version of the serial was broadcast as usual for this season on Monday and Tuesday nights, starting on February the 15th and finishing on February the 23rd, 1982. And this episode, the short summary is with Riley. Over to you, my friend.
After a shootout in a manor house that Unit would have loved to have been a part of, the serial starts the funniest way possible. Tegan actually thinks she will arrive at Heathrow. Of course she is not, because the TARDIS has brought them to 17th century England, which leads to Tegan doing what she does best, gripe and lash out at everyone. After being chased off by some villagers, the TARDIS crew is harbored by a thespian highwayman named Richard Mace, who we learn later is fucking awesome. From there, they uncover a fiendish plot done by a quartet of sea monkeys to kill off all of humanity because for some reason they don't think there's enough room for the 4 of them. Obviously, they have some issues with personal space. The Doctor and the TARDIS crew were able to stop this plan by shooting one of the pteroleptals in the gut and bludgeoning the others before burning their still alive bodies. Like you usually see on a kid's show. We find out this is actually the start of the Great Fire of London, which began on Pudding Lane. By the way, Pudding Lane was given that name not because they sold sticky, toffee pudding, but because they used it to transport organ meats to waste barges. That's the end.
Wow. All right, let's talk about this one. By the way, thank you, Riley.
No problem. Historical.
Yeah, so I want to call out an interesting parallel. So last night, I sat down with my girlfriend and watched the first 2 parts of The Time Warrior, which also has an opening in a historical context with a shooting star before an alien shows up mind-controlling a bunch of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big parallel there.
So there's a lot of parallels with a lot of previous stories, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a fairly safe Doctor Who story, but because of that, I think it did allow different moments of shiningness that I've been missing for some of these other stories, and we'll get into it when we get to them. But I actually really appreciated some of it. For example, the beginning, not only is it like the Time Warrior, but it's also just like Tom Baker stories in general, where it does not open with the TARDIS crew.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had that. And we get bickering in the early modern period. And to make Riley especially happy, and here's a callback to our Box of Delights Christmas special, they're having possets.
Yes, they are. The official beverage of Watchers in the Fourth Dimension. If you see us at a convention, give us a posset. Buy us a posset.
Please don't.
But I am really happy with some of this stuff. You get shots of that's from the creature's perspective. We haven't seen that in a while, but it has been done on the show before. I think that it's almost like not quite a best of, but I do see a lot of things happening here. And I think it allowed Davidson to do a lot more than he had been doing previously.
I fully agree. I even took a note at some point watching it where I appreciate the more simple storyline, something that is a little bit more basic. I think that they've all been very crazy stories so far, and it hasn't necessarily let anybody breathe. And I felt like they had the space to actually maybe have time to figure out who their characters were this episode, or at least let us have a little bit more insight into that. And so I did appreciate that. It also is like a Doctor-led episode finally.
Yeah.
He's driving it.
Yeah, I agree completely. That was my exact thought as well. It feels like they were really trying to do a lot of complicated things the last 3 serials with really a brand new companion group and a new Doctor. It's just too high a level of difficulty for them. It's like with cooking, you can't just go in there and just start trying to make the most complicated high Michelin star rated dish. You need to start up and just say, you know what? Make grilled cheese sandwich. And if you can do that, let's build from there. And it's good that they're trying to find their base because, man, I've been suffering the last 3 serials, and I feel like this is finally a little bit of solid footing that can be grown and built on from.
This feels very back to basics. And I almost feel like they are mocking what we've been seeing. When we finally get to the TARDIS crew, the Doctor's already berating Adric over something. And even Nyssa calls it out. She's like, poor old Adric, always in trouble. And then Tegan very quickly gets stroppy about the fact that they haven't arrived at Heathrow Terminal 1 and throws a hissy fit as well. But after that, they all seem to settle a bit, except for Adric, who still continues being stroppy.
Yes. What I really liked about the TARDIS scenes was getting some interactions between them. That scene with Nyssa and Tegan, beautiful. I've been waiting for an actual companion scene for them to actually talk to each other like normal individuals and accept what's happening to them.
Wouldn't it be nice if they killed Adric and just gave us Nyssa and Tegan?
Oh my God. How very dare you?
Julie, leaping off of that, you're right, because the only time I can ever really remember them being together, they were lugging around their 5th Doctor luggage set in Castrovalva. So it was very good to actually have a moment of reflection. It just, as we discussed last time, there really hasn't been a good job done so far in regards to the characterization of these companions. I feel like I don't know them. I know one trait of them, and that is about it. They need to flourish, and hopefully, I think it's starting here. And that scene that Julia pointed out is a perfect example. I've silenced everyone with that. I have given the most amazing comment.
One thing that I also appreciated, well, one, I want to say the dialogue is so good in this story, and there's lots of quips and a lot of quotes that I liked. And yes, it's the tried and true one with about the broken clock. But yes, Tegan overreacts, but in a fun way, much better than she has in the past, because she directly confronts the Doctor about it and is just calling him out on him not being able to use his own TARDIS. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's talk about when they arrive, because we land in what we know is the early modern period. It's the 17th century. There's sulfur being burned, the hints that something's going on laid down pretty quickly, and it's not long before we find out about plague. But before we do, we meet this gloriously affable rogue in a tree.
I love him so much.
I'm obsessed.
Oh my God. Same here.
He's definitely overacted, but he is fucking brilliant.
Perfectly overacted. Spot on.
I was afraid that I was going to hate his character. And then he kept going, and I'm like, this is the best one-story character that we've had in a very long time, and I'm sad that he hasn't joined the TARDIS crew and replaced Adric.
Y'all, leave my boy alone. What is he? Okay, he's been rude recently, but please.
I mean, so far, he is definitely the lead contender for best supporting character this season.
Yes.
By a fucking country mile.
Right.
Every time he was like, I need to sit down.
You're like, same, buddy, same.
And finally a relatable character, am I right? But there was that moment where the Doctor was like, all right, well, F you, we're leaving. I was like, no. Please, please, he can't disappear in episode 2. Please let me have him until the end.
Yeah.
The only thing that could made him better was that if we really did have a time machine and that part could be played by Matt Berry, that was the only way it could have gotten any better. I think the performance was great. It was so enjoyable, and it made me realize that it's a pretty damning indictment on the show that I would argue so far for the Fifth Doctor, both in how they have a rapport. Richard Mace is a better companion so far for the Fifth Doctor than any of the other companions, and he's only been in one serial, and he's still by far better than anyone else. And he's like actually has a good repartee with the Doctor. I'm like, I don't really see that with the other companions.
It's because he's an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. Yeah. I'm not saying that is how it should be, but they're definitely writing these companions as children, as we've discussed before. And I don't think that helps.
But what I would also throw out there is that the Doctor is pretty mean.
Oh, yeah.
He's not a very nice human. Well, he's not a human being. A nice person so far. And I think that while The Last Doctor wasn't necessarily a walk in the park, the 5 is very pointedly mean.
And I think what's disappointing is he's designed to come across as so mild-mannered, but he's just constantly a dick to Adric.
Well, anytime someone's like, I am incapable of helping, I literally can't do it. He's like, you're an absolute waste of carbon. How dare you exist? And then when they're like, hey, I'm going to help, he's like, what are you going to do? You're absolutely a waste of carbon. He's never mild. He's just always kind of mean.
Yeah. That said, just back to Richard Mace, Russell T Davies, in the unlikely event that you're listening, please take on Riley's suggestion of a similar character joining the TARDIS crew played by Matt Berry, because we all know it would be fucking glorious.
So good.
So they end up in the manor house.
Right.
There's a brick wall at the bottom of the staircase. The Doctor disappears. Oh, we do get the Doctor will explain, which I think counts as an I'll explain later.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is the first one in this story. And then we see the jeweled hands of the robot lock them all in at the bottom of that staircase. And our cliffhanger is Tegan yelling, "Doctor!" which is candidly a really weak cliffhanger. But we're into part 2.
But the recaps are amazing. So
some of them are a bit long, I thought, Julia. I thought some of them you might have issues with.
one was borderline, but the rest were fine.
Okay. All right.
And especially because I understand why they did what they did. So it's fine. I want to talk about the sequence when the doctor looks like he's coming out of the wall. I really enjoyed that. I thought it looked good.
But you know who's the true hero in the immediate following sequences? Obviously our boy Richard Mace.
Yes.
His enthusiasm about, the wall going, "An amazing illusion." Then asking for a bottle of wine from the cellar, Tegan telling him that it's stealing, and he goes, "Well, I am a highwayman, madam." And she goes, "This isn't a highway." When Adric doesn't know what the wine tastes like, and Mace just goes, "Nectar," and Adric goes, "What does that taste like?" And he's about to call him a stupid boy when the robot shows up and starts shooting. It's just glorious.
You call them robots. I call them bedazzled glam rock cyborgs.
Oh my God. Fully dragged out androids. I love them.
I don't know why we decided to bedazzle, but, it worked. It was great. And it's fine.
It's another action figure I want real bad.
That one might exist.
I feel like it should.
That would be amazing. And speaking of one thing, a little bit of backtracking, and we do see this set again later on in the serial, but I'm guessing it's Tegan's guest room that she's in the TARDIS. Very classic 80s, early 80s service merchandise. I don't know if people remember that old department store style going on in there. I really appreciated that. And that really does fit that bedazzled glam rock cyborgs because it's still the early 80s, so we're still having a little bit of disco, just hanging around, just barely hanging on for dear life.
Mm-hmm.
Can we discuss the villagers, the mob, which seems very strange to me, and that I know that our villain considers them primitive, but why do they seem to have such issues talking when they have the mind control on them? Because he's constantly getting those radio updates, and it just kind of confused me. And I said, well, they can speak. Why is it so difficult for them to report back when they're being mind controlled?
I almost feel like something was lost in either the edit or in scripting that might have been there in an earlier draft.
I wanted there to be a little bit of malfunction with the bracelets and thought there was going to be in one of the other parts with the Miller, but that's not the direction that they ended up going, because I think it would be interesting if you had one or two of them whose power packs died.
Yep.
And just see what that reaction would have been. So it's a little sad that we didn't get that, but I'll forgive it because, I think that also would have cut into our theater man's time, and I wanted as much of him as possible.
Yeah.
Are you guys surprised that, hey, it's my favorite mind control?
Yeah.
Because did we really actually have to do this again?
Did we get this in the Time Warrior? Yes. Are we getting it again in the Visitation? Yes.
And on a massive scale. It's a whole bunch of villagers.
And I was a little bit sad because we got the one bedazzled android and we didn't get more bedazzled androids, so that made me very sad.
But I do appreciate that becomes a plot point. They are disappointed that they don't have more bedazzled androids. So they're going to steal the TARDIS and go and get more bedazzled androids.
Yeah, that's their ultimate goal.
I mean, slay. Am I right?
So they're basically just going to have a whole bunch of lizard aliens and bedazzled androids, and that's the world they're going to live in?
Absolutely.
Yep.
There's worse things, I suppose.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
That being said, I actually take a lot of umbrage with the fact that they're referring to these creatures as lizards because they're clearly fish.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have gills.
They have gills and fishtails.
Yep.
Fish are not reptiles.
No.
In any way, shape, or form. But I still thought that they were adorable.
And they're pretty good for 1982. I mean, their mouths move independently, their gills move. It's a better design than we've had.
They had all those creepy teeth.
Yeah.
I think it was a great job on the mask. Great design. Not a lot of mobility in that costume, though. I don't know what was going on with the elbows, but they kind of didn't have much movement with the arm is there. They could only kind of do up and down at the elbow and nothing else.
What I really appreciated was the fact that we do get to see the other two, and they are different color schemes, different sizes, they're different heights, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, there's some diversity in this species. They don't all look identical. I'm with you, Julie. It looks great.
Too bad they're extinct now.
We'll get there. Well, the whole species isn't extinct. Remember, they were runaways.
Oh, right. Yeah,
they were
that's
fugitives.
right. Yeah.
I want to talk about, so are we getting to the point where they found the one ship?
Yes, this half-buried life pod.
I have a question. So one of the guys, they open the door, one of the villagers shoots an arrow, and how does it embed itself into a metal wall?
Don't ask awkward questions, Julie.
It embeds itself into a metal wall. But I think that there were some great shots here, because another thing that happened is they were hiding behind something, and then the doctor pops up after firing the escape hatch. And I just think that for some reason, it felt very doctory to me. It felt very David Tennant doctor to me.
I have questions about the escape hatch.
Same.
Because the majority of this thing seems to be buried, right? We've got the entranceway that's exposed, but the rest of this thing seems to be buried. So how does that escape hatch work?
To be fair, he did say, I hope this isn't under... He did make mention.
Yeah.
There's still clearly a substantial drop-off cliff right there.
Yes.
That lets them have that kind of deep access. Because he walked out of there and I was like, that's some lovely vinage hanging right outside that door.
Yeah.
So just ignore that piece. It's fine.
Yeah.
Hand wavy.
Can we talk about Mace's love affair with the horse?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I get it. I would also be that person who's like, ooh, horsey.
He really wants to steal this horse. And when he finally sees this horse, he goes, the object of my desire. It's so over the top. It's so campy. He's amazing.
He really is. Honestly, I can't remember the last time I enjoyed a guest character on the show as much as this character. It's been a long time.
It has. So while we have the Doctor and Mace and Nyssa for a little bit, and obviously she goes over to the TARDIS, we then have Adric and Tegan together because, yes, let's pair these two together because they love each other so much. I absolutely love when Tegan is going to pry those bars off and Adric says, let me try, I'm stronger. And Tegan goes, no. No. And I adored that. And also, I mean, earlier in part 1, they're fighting people and he falls over while Tegan and Nyssa then actually get them out of the situation. So, Adric, I'm sorry, but you're not stronger. You're not better at fighting. Just do your math and you're fine.
Oh, yeah. It's very clear that he's not better at fighting when we get to that later.
It definitely feels that Sayward has no time for Adric.
But
my man.
Adric still, in the middle, he has that whole moment where he's like, I'm useless. And I was like, I know you are, but I really wish you didn't feel that way. Because it's the situation that's making you useless. You're really good at math.
I mean, in that cell, Tegan gets busted by the android while Adric escapes. And all I could think was, well, at least he's not actively siding with the Pteroleptons this time.
What's really funny is I liked Adric at the beginning, and he's just deteriorated. And I do find that very sad.
Yeah, I do feel like he was much stronger with the Fourth Doctor, but I was half expecting him to, side with the Pteroleptals and tell everyone it's nuanced,
They promise this is going to be a good virus. Oh man,
boy.
Y'all have even got me coming against Adric now.
I know.
I understand why people No, honestly, I haven't. No, I can say mean things about my favorite people. That's fine. I understand why people rag on him, but my sympathy's still there. Bless his little heart.
All right. So we're getting to the end, right? This is the point where I thought something could have happening with the Miller because he seems to be behaving slightly differently than the other townspeople. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, ooh, is the Miller going to help them? maybe his battery died or he didn't actually get hypnotized or something. No, that's not what happens. And that made me very sad.
Yes. So, the end of part 2. The Doctor and Mace are captured by the villagers. They're accused of being plague carriers. They're about to get executed. And the Doctor says, not again. And that's our cliffhanger. I assume in this case he means, oh, I'm not about to die again. But it does come across as maybe he's been beheaded before. And then that leads to all sorts of other questions. Can a Time Lord regenerate if their head has been cut off?
That was my question.
Highlander rules.
Yes, I had the same question. I don't think it has been answered. I don't know if it will be answered.
I'd like to think that he would be able to regrow his head and then he can carry his old head around in a jar.
Or it's going to be like the Thing or Deadpool situation where he like gets little arms and little legs growing out of his head and he's walking around like that until it all balances out.
No. Absolutely not.
Big Finish, do not listen to us right now.
Oh my God, no, please do it.
Actually, Big Finish have this whole like Unbound what if range that's not really canon. So please do that as part of Unbound. All right, part 3.
Yes, part 3.
This was the one I thought had a fairly long cliffhanger that might put Julie's nose out of joint a bit.
It was one of those situations where I think I get that they were trying to show both cliffhangers, like what happened with Tegan and what happened over here. So I understand why they did what they did.
Yeah.
And it still wasn't over 2 minutes long, so we're okay.
I would like to point out that a bunch of villagers dressed like that with torches and pitchforks trying to kill outsiders who believe have brought in a plague, that is the game Bloodborne. My favorite video game of all time. I could not let that go without making a reference to it, and I'm doing it right now. God, it was amazing. Second, in part 3, one of the villagers says, as I mentioned at the beginning of our episode, kill them, Scythe Man. Is that the name of the character? Because if so, I want to know, where is the Doctor Who Scythe Man action figure? I think this character has a lot of merchandising potential. But honestly, that was such an awkward line. I don't really understand it, why they have to identify him as Scythe Man. I don't think that was it. Wouldn't they be called a Reaper? Wouldn't that be what they would be called? But yes. I don't know. Anyway. And speaking of Reaper, I thought that was a very nice touch. I think it comes up here in part 3, how our non-bedazzled androids, when they're all covered up in a black cloak and their white faces, do resemble the classic Grim Reaper, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, especially because I was rather bothered in the beginning about how all of these 17th century people were like, oh, that's a weird comet. It's so cool. When in reality, they would have been like, holy shit, we're all going to die.
Yeah, that's right. It was harbingers of bad news or bad things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, any comet. So a weird one is definitely like, okay, we're all dead. But everybody was like, isn't that so cool? The superstition of the 17th century was missing for a lot of it. So it was good to see that.
I'm really sad that Tegan gets her mind messed with again. And I really hate it.
Yeah, it's got to be messing her up inside, man. It's like the brain scramblies or something
from all the time. Yeah.
Yes. She can't keep handling this. Let's give her a break, okay? I mean, geez.
Just a brief one.
It's like
Come on.
Nyssa got to sleep in the TARDIS for an entire story. Like, let that happen to Tegan.
Yeah.
And pretty much, again, Nyssa, I still feel like is getting... It's better than before, still feels kind of sidelined from the action. It just seems in the second half of the story, she's just hanging out in the TARDIS, trying to make her own hi-fi stereo system, like oblivious to what's going on out there. Just like, I'm just going to do a little crafting stuff here. That's all I'm going to do.
Well, I don't think she was oblivious, because I do think that she made several comments throughout about how this is not fun. This is not a good time. She's not happy. The way that the Doctor is operating is not something she vibes with. And she seems genuinely like frustrated that she's stuck in the TARDIS while everybody else gets to romp off and have deadly adventures.
With that comment you made, brings me to this question. Is this the most disgruntled, unhappiest TARDIS crew we've ever had?
I think possibly since the original.
Yeah.
Well, and even then, Ian and Babs, they were able to have fun.
Yeah,
Right.
it took them a few stories. It probably wasn't until Marco Polo, which was story 4. So we're getting to a point where, yeah, they probably should be having a bit more fun now.
This is a very emotionally unavailable TARDIS crew.
Mhm.
Well, until Adric starts crying.
Yeah, but he's having such a hard time.
Life's hard for Adric.
He's realizing that math isn't everything, and that's a tough thing to have to deal with.
It's either that or the Master's Sex Dungeon, and he's got neither of those in this story.
Look. Yeah, he doesn't have his hobbies. Leave him alone.
So we have Nyssa and Adric doing this thing, and the fact that Adric leaves again, so he comes and complains to Nyssa.
Funniest scene in the entire serial.
Why is he never around when you want him? It's like, wow, he talks about the Doctor like he's an absent father.
Yeah.
10 seconds. 10 seconds after he's out the door. Captured.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You cannot tell me that is not intentionally humorous. You cannot tell me that the showrunner and the writer aren't sick of his shit too, and they're just shitting on this kid intentionally.
They're the ones writing him. It's their fault.
And Waterhouse just does such a good job. Such a good job.
I mean, he's trying, and I have to feel like to act that role has got to be so frustrating. You're just constantly the butt of jokes and just getting kicked around and made a fool all the time. God.
Meanwhile, he can fly the TARDIS.
It takes him a little bit, but yes, he has learned that.
He can.
Slightly better than the Doctor, because he was able to get it from point A to point B and not skip out on 300 years.
Yeah, he's not useless.
So there is that. Okay, so we'll switch to the Doctor and Mace, because the Doctor and Mace, let's be honest. Now, love Mace, but however, I'm going to take this knife and try to hack the barn wall. Doesn't really seem like a good plan.
Right, but in my headcanon, he's at least halfway already loaded. And so just roll with it. He's had a lot of ale. He's just constantly on a buzz, so we just let that slide.
Okay.
I'm pretty much willing to let anything he does slide.
All right, where are we in this story at this point?
We're kind of in part 3. I did have a question. So, okay, they're in the barn, the Doctor and Mace, and they're trying to figure out how they can get out. So they're trying the door, and then the android comes and blows a hole into the side, right? Then the android comes out and comes after and scares off the villagers.
Yep.
Did the Doctor and Mace just decide to just stick around and wait to get captured? Like, why didn't they run off?
Yeah, they could have escaped out of the hole that the android created in the back.
So that's like my one major like plot hole of this entire story is that part right there.
Yep, I think that's valid.
But hey, the Sonic gets destroyed. I'm so happy.
That's in the next part. That's in part 4.
No, because I have a note that says, no, not the Sonic.
Oh, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it's essentially the cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Because Mace gets mind controlled. The Doctor's alone in the cell. He's trying to escape and he gets busted with the Sonic. And so the lead pterodactyl destroys it. And that's where you get the, I feel as if you've just killed an old friend remark. Yes.
A decent line. A decent line. And now we have, if I think where we are, we have Tegan also now under the mind control as well with Mace in that room with the Doctor. And then don't release the rats.
Yep, because these are rats infected with a genetically re-engineered version of the Black Death. They will kill everyone. Everyone.
Yeah.
Because there's not a room on Earth for 4 reptile-looking guys.
Who may or may not have any way of procreating.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah. So the Doctor tries to convince the mind control Tegan not to open the cage. If you do, it's the end for us all. And that's our cliffhanger. And we're into part 4.
I'm mad. I have another mad moment.
Uh-oh.
Oh, dear.
And it's,
I wonder if it's the same as mine.
well, for me, it's they don't allow Tegan to overcome the mind control herself. And that makes me very sad because they have these opportunities. And I understand that you can't make the companions these supernatural type people who are like able to do things that normal people can't, especially at this time. We're not in New Who when all of a sudden companions have this secret abilities and all of a sudden turn out to be more important than the Doctor in some cases somehow. I don't know how. But I feel like because it's happened to her before, that she would have ways of like overcoming it. And it made me sad that they didn't try to go that route.
Mm-hmm. She's also obstinate enough that I feel like her character type could also do that, especially if humans are truly capable of breaking that mind control.
There's one way they could have done it that would have been satisfactory with the Doctor helping her. It would have been with the Doctor saying, like, fight it, Tegan, fight it. And then the Doctor saying, hey, Tegan, are we in Heathrow yet? And then she kind of like rages out like the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, no. I mean, to be fair, no one is able to overcome this on their own. Like, we don't see another character do it. So I kind of like that Tegan's not special.
Mm-hmm.
See, I kind of, again, I think because I wanted the Miller to get over it, I think I was just secretly trying along the way to be like, hey, why haven't we overcome this? I also had the mindset of, hey, how come the android just doesn't turn tail and go against its creator? So that's kind of where I'm at. I just, for some reason, that was stuck in my head while I was watching this for no real reason.
Well, I was really sidetracked at the beginning by the immediacy at which the Doctor was like, you cannot open the cage. If you open the cage, we are all dead. The plague is carried by fleas. Like, it's in the rat, but you get it because you're bitten by a flea that bit the rat before. And so the bars in the cage are perfectly acceptable for a flea to jump through. And a flea can jump so long that from the rat could have landed on anybody in that room.
Diana, I love you dearly, but stop pointing out the holes in this plot. Because they are there and they are gaping.
That one really I got stuck on that one a little bit.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, the Pteroleptals fuck off to London and Nyssa finishes her gadget.
Oh, no. I want to talk about the scene with the safety pin because there's some brilliant things about this. I mean, first off, Mace almost has it. He's almost done. And then just the look on the Doctor's face when he shot the lock off, for some reason I was like, here we go. We're starting to get kind of like doctor-y feels from Peter Davidson. And then he goes immediately and uses the same safety pin to get through the electronic lock. Did you notice that? He opens up the panel for the lock that controls that doorway to the back room, and he uses the safety pin. Go look at it.
Will do. I think we should discuss Nissa's big scene here in part 4.
Yep.
So she creates the hi-fi stereo system,
which starts with her just moving furniture around. I do want to point out there are scenes where she is just doing home decor.
Which is part of it I found so interesting was that based because she was so sidelined before, in this serial, I'm kind of wondering, are they trying to develop her as a companion that is like the in-house mechanic / IT person who doesn't really go out? She's there when they need her to fix something, because that's kind of what it felt like. But I did enjoy the scene where she uses her creation to destroy the android, and you do get some characterization from her. Just it's such a shame. It was such an interesting machine that I've destroyed, and she feels bad about it. Nice. Character building. Interesting. Well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I would like more of that, please.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that's felt like it's generally been lacking with this TARDIS crew. I mean, we got some of it with Tegan at the beginning of the story when she's talking about the impact the Mara had on her, so we are getting a definite link to something that's happened before, but in general, character development is something that we just haven't had enough of.
Right, or just an inconsistency as well into that character, but I think this may be the start of something good. I hope so.
Yeah.
I guess we should then bring up the the beginnings of that scene is Adric's assistance with the android. So I know it's old hat for us, but I thought it particularly hilarious. Adric's fighting technique with the android, which involved literally kind of half swinging your leg and kicking it in the ass. What?
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Don't ask. Don't ask. It makes no sense and never will.
I mean, it's not even real fighting. It's like Three Stooges level fighting. Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah, it's fine. I like the fact that Nyssa gets to actually defeat the android by herself. The doctor does not have to come in and fix the thing before he does it, because that happened a lot with Tom Baker, I think.
Yeah.
And so it was very nice that they let Nyssa actually be able to do the thing. And the doctor really kind of accept that she did it by herself, because he comes in and kind of makes a comment. And then Nyssa's like, yeah, well, I still did it. And he just kind of gives her a look. I'm like, okay, he knows.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated kind of some of that dynamic where, yes, this doctor can be rude and mean and things like that, but he's also not mansplaining or kind of going on a soapbox that Tom Baker often went on.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Well, from there, Adric and Nyssa are able to get the TARDIS to materialize inside the manor home in order to get the Doctor and Tegan and Mace out, because they were able to escape the room, but they apparently can't get further outside of the, I guess, stairway / foyer that they're in or whatever.
I do love that how they do it is Adric has to thump the console. Smack.
And the doctor's still looking at Adric really annoyed.
Oh, he is pouting hard. And I couldn't quite figure out whether it's the fact that someone else was driving the TARDIS or if it's because they took their time getting there.
I think it was mostly the taking time getting there, as in he kept on hearing the TARDIS and it didn't quite materialize. And he's just like, oh my God, Adric's going to break it. Adric is going to break my TARDIS.
But like the Doctor can never do better.
It was also a nice touch that when they took off, they had the Doctor thump the TARDIS in like the next scene. Yeah.
All right. So the final scene, this all seems fairly obvious, right? The Doctor tracks the pteroleptals through tech. We land at a bakery in London. If you know English history, you know where this is going. The year's 1666. It's going to be the Great Fire of London. That's how this is going to end.
Yeah.
And that's how it does end.
Bloody massacre of pterodactyls.
Of all four of them.
I know.
There's only 3. Remember, the 4th one had already died.
So does 3 count as a massacre? To me, that's just a multiple homicide.
People died in the fire too.
Right.
Yeah.
All I know is that this level of killing of an alien race got the Brigadier really, really happy if he was there to see it.
Well, again, luckily it's not complete genocide because they are runaway pteroleptals. Right. So they're fugitives. It's fine.
By the way, I do want to say that while lots of buildings were destroyed in the Great Fire of London, history only records 8 people as having died. So it destroyed nearly 14,000 houses, about 87 churches, plus other things, the old St. Paul's Cathedral, the Royal Exchange, etc., etc. But only 8 people died.
And 3 of them were pterodactyls.
Yeah, 3 of them were pterodactyls.
Officially.
Ooh, what smells like fish?
What? Okay. No. Why? Why? Like, I've seen several scenes in television and film where a body is burning. Sometimes it's a funeral pyre. Sometimes it can be very tranquil or peaceful, like a sending off. Why is it bubbling? Who made the choice for it to bubble? Come on, man.
I figured that would gross you out a bit, right?
It does. And I don't understand why I can watch tons of horror movies that are incredibly gory. But when it comes to Doctor Who, particularly classic Doctor Who, I guess I get offended off of the level like, come on, you're Doctor Who. You shouldn't be doing this. And it grosses me out, I guess, because I have my expectations set for them. They just disappoint me is what I'm saying.
In one of the earlier parts where we first saw that device that was like opening and closing and came with like a noise, I was wondering whether either Riley or Diana, whether one of you would be grossed out by that, but we passed that without commentary, so I guess not.
Wait, are you talking about their little like kind of their
little green flower thing? Yeah.
I like their little bong thing. They're all hanging around. It's a hookah. They were just kind of smoking out of it.
I did wonder if the little squelching noises would gross you out.
No, those weren't bad. Yeah. No,
okay.
That was all right.
All right.
Yeah. I actually would.
Yeah,
you know
same.
what? I would buy one of those little green things. Is available.
So you're grossed out
The bubbling.
by the bubbling in the same way that you were grossed out by things in Planet of the Daleks. Diana, did anything in this gross you out as much as Flush Time?
Yes.
Can you not?
Oh my God! Thank you for bringing that back.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for bringing that back.
I had to.
There's nothing.
I want.
Oh.
I want. I want the T-shirt. I want the T-shirt that for us that has Flesh Time on it. I want the font to be in like the most wonderfully like large cursive with like pink and purple and like rounded, really rounded font.
Not that I'm encouraging this, but like on a skin toned t-shirt
Yes.
too.
Yes. So we need Flesh Time t-shirts. I want to talk about chair t-shirts. What other t-shirts do we need?
Dear listeners, please write in what T-shirts would you actually want?
Clearly, I need one with a photo of my girl Cessa of Diplos with the caption "Silver Glamazon Queen."
Oh boy! Oh man!
Y'all are also welcome to dissuade us from doing the skin option because that's so
They're not going to
gross.
dissuade us. They are not. Someone will send it to us.
Please.
All right, so we're so nearly at the end of this. So we end with the Doctor telling the TARDIS crew that they should let the fire run its course. And when everyone gives him a blank look, he says, "I'll explain someday," which I think is our second "I'll explain later."
Yes.
So we're at 2 for this story. Nice. All right, that's the end of the story. Let's go ahead and rate this. Before that, our running metrics. Firstly, I'll explain later, we had 2, so yay. So far this season we've had 4, which is a third of all that we've had in the show so far. Query, no quarries, no jelly babies, camp count. I feel like this deserves points, 1, for how over the top Richard Mace is. Gloriously over the top, but still over the top. And 2, for our bedazzled glam rock robot. So between the 2 of them, how many points are we allocating?
I say 2. I mean, I don't feel like they were more than that. I think they were nice standard 1-pointers.
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy that. So we get a 2. Awesome. All right, let's rate this. And oh God, I get to go first. Okay. Well, this is an improvement. Massively so. I know I've seen this show before from start to finish. I've marathoned this show before from start to finish. I had forgotten how rough this season kind of starts out. And I was starting to get a little bit worried, even though I know what's coming up. But this was really enjoyable. And yes, it kind of falls back on some old tropes. It is very much a back to basics approach. Unfortunately, we do have to put up with Adric being bratty, with Tegan having a strop. But, you know, that strop's actually somewhat salvaged. But best of all, we have Richard fucking Mace, the true hero of this story. And so for me, because I enjoyed this a lot more than anything I've enjoyed in a while, this is going to get 7.5 scarred fugitive aliens out of 10. Julie, you're up next.
All right. I have to agree. In a lot of ways, you want to call it back to basics. I also like to say that it's tried and true, good tropes that we've used before that, yes, it's not original, so to speak, but man, they delivered. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that there were lots of good shots. The dialogue was excellent. You have great, outstanding cast. These aliens look so good compared to what we've gotten in the past. And I agree with Anthony. This is the first thing I've enjoyed in a while. So I'm also giving it 7.5 charismatic thespians out of 10.
All right, Riley, what have you got?
Probably repeating what everyone else has said and how we feel, but I'll go ahead. This is a step forward compared to the first 3 serials for the 5th Doctor. And it's because the show is running a very basic formula, which for any other TARDIS crew would have been a bit stale. But for what we've gone through, any sort of stability was greatly appreciated by me now. It's a standard genocidal alien in the past story with classic Doctor villain face-offs. The whole serial is elevated by Richard Mace. The character and performance raises this up a whole 2 points for me personally. And this leads to what we have is the continuing problems that the show has right now. In my opinion, Davison feels unsure of himself in the title role. I still don't think he's the Doctor, and the companions have been handled very poorly, and that's probably why Mace stood out so much. He is the best companion the show has had for a while now. I will be cautiously optimistic for now in hopes that this is the beginning of an improvement. So I will give this 6.5 RTD. I have a check for a whopping $200. Please put Matt Berry and Doctor Who's out of 10.
And then last but very much not least, Diana.
So I know that I punched some holes throughout this story.
You did.
But I like to argue that means I was engaged in the story. And that hasn't happened lately because they've been bad. And so this one was such a breath of fresh air. The simplicity of it, I think, was needed. We haven't had a good, simple story where it's really been able to let the characters come through. This is the first time I feel like the episode has been Doctor-led. We have talked about him a lot, and we did not talk about him in any of the last episodes almost. I really enjoyed it. I love a historical. I'm always down, mostly because I get to punch holes in it, and I delight in doing so. Mostly because so much of the historicalness is actually pretty solid and is really beautiful little reference points. I don't enjoy the vibe of the TARDIS crew right now. I wish somebody liked each other. I feel like Tegan and Nyssa tolerate each other at best, and that's the most positive relationship we have at the moment. And that bums me out. It's not even like funny we don't like each other. Like the Doctor cannot say a nice word to anybody. And, you know, I hope he likes somebody at some point. That would be nice. I'm also taking a bit of a point off of the fact that Mace decided to stay back and fight the fire means he's probably one of the 8 casualties.
No. Boo.
I hate to point that out. Okay. He's a magician and he apparates to, you know, Prague and he's safe. But that being said, I'm still also giving it a 7.5 out of 10 discotheque automatons.
And that gives us a story average of 7.25, making it the strongest one so far this season. Now, I do want to point out, Diana is apparently DTH, down to historical. Riley already answered the question I was about to ask before we call it a day on this episode, which, is he the Doctor yet?
Nope.
Riley has said no. Julie?
I think he's close.
Okay.
I'm getting the moments. I'm getting some of the, what I'm going to assume is some of the like facial expressions and what his direction is going as the Doctor, because it is going to be very different, I feel, than what we've gotten previously. So I wouldn't say it's completely fleshed out, but it's definitely the most that we've gotten Doctor in the last 3 stories combined.
All right. Diana?
Yeah, pretty similar. Because this is the first one where he's really gotten to lead, I think it's the first time we've gotten to see a lot of that characterization. And so I think it's, again, close, but I'm going to still go with a no.
And I think I'm on the same page. We're 4 stories in and it's still a no. And I think this might be a record for us. 4 stories and no, which is sad to say. And I think, and I'm not going to tell you when, I think I know the point where we're all going to say yes as well.
I mean, it was probably close for me with Tom Baker because, as you all know, Tom took a little bit of time for me.
Yeah, I think you said yes by Genesis, though, which was his 4th story.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. We will be back next time when we tackle a 2-parter for the first time since season 12 with Black Orchid. And fun fact, I was once in a heavy metal band called Black Orchid. And yes, I picked the name. But in the meantime, thank you so very much for listening. And of course, as always, have a good one. You have been listening to Watchers in the Fourth Dimension with Diana Burney, Riley Schreck, Julie Philippek, and myself, Anthony Williams. This episode, Emotionally Unavailable TARDIS Crew, was recorded on Wednesday the 30th of April 2025. If this is your first time listening into the show, all of our previous episodes are available wherever you like to get your podcasts. You can interact with us on Facebook and Instagram at Watchers4D, and you can also email us at watchers4d@gmail.com. If you're enjoying the show, please do subscribe and consider leaving us a review or rating on your favorite podcasting app. All of those things really do help the show. And always remember, Richard Mace is an absolute legend and really should have replaced at least 2 of the 4 members of the TARDIS crew.